I shared my biggest dream with the person I trusted most, and she turned around and sold it as her own right under my nose. But when the spotlight hit her at the company gala, the truth came crashing out in a way nobody saw coming. The moment I saw my own business concept printed on a glossy presentation board with someone else's name under it, my hands went numb. Not shaking. Numb. Like my body knew before my brain did that the person I'd been living with for 2 years had just gutted me in the most calculated way possible. But I need to back up. Way up. Because this story doesn't start at that presentation board. It starts in a place I don't love talking about. I grew up in a house where trust was a trap. My father was the kind of man who'd promise you the world at breakfast and tear it away by dinner just to watch your face. He was charming to neighbors, hilarious at barbecues, the guy everyone wanted at their party. But behind closed doors, he was someone else entirely. He controlled my mother with silence and money and these little cutting remarks that didn't sound cruel unless you were the one they were aimed at. I left home at 17, couch surfed for a while, worked at a gas station, then a diner, then eventually got myself into community college. It wasn't glamorous. I ate ramen 4 nights a week and studied in the back of the library until they kicked me out at closing. But I had a goal. I wanted to build something of my own, something no one could take from me. That's where Mrs. Calloway comes in. She was my business communications professor at the community college. Mid-50s, silver streak in her hair, always wore these oversized reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She was tough. The kind of teacher who'd hand back your paper covered in red ink and say, "You're better than this, so stop giving me garbage." I hated her at first. I thought she was singling me out. But one day after class, she asked me to stay behind, and she said something I'll never forget. "You write like someone who's been told their ideas don't matter. But they do. You just need to stop apologizing for having them." That broke something open in me. From that point on, Mrs. Calloway became the closest thing I had to a real mentor. She pushed me to enter a regional business pitch competition. I didn't win, but I placed third and something clicked. I realized I had a mind for this stuff. Strategy, branding, identifying gaps in the market. It came naturally to me in a way school never had before. After I graduated, I got a job at a mid-size marketing firm in the city. Nothing fancy. Entry-level content work, scheduling posts, writing copy for clients who sold things like organic dog treats and artisanal candles. But it was a foot in the door. That's where I met Danielle. Danielle Price. She started about 3 months after me. Bright smile, always put together, always saying the right thing to the right person. She had this way of walking into a room and making everyone feel like they were her best friend. Within a week, the whole office loved her. I'll be honest, I liked her too. She was warm. She remembered little things, like the fact that I hated cilantro or that I always drank my coffee with oat milk. She'd bring me a latte on rough mornings without being asked. It felt like the kind of friendship I'd been missing my whole life. When my lease was up a few months later, Danielle suggested we get a place together. She said it made financial sense, which it did. The rent in that city was brutal, and splitting a 2-bedroom was way cheaper than going it alone. I figured, why not? We got along great at work. Living together seemed like the natural next step. For the first year, it was fine. Better than fine, actually. We'd cook dinner together, binge terrible reality shows, talk about our dreams late into the night on the living room floor with cheap wine and takeout containers between us. It felt like having a sister, a real one, the kind I never had. That's when I started telling her about the idea. I'd been working on it for almost a year at that point, quietly, in notebooks and late-night spreadsheets and scribbled napkin sketches. The concept was a subscription-based platform for small business owners, specifically women-owned startups, that bundled branding tools, marketing templates, and mentorship matching into one affordable monthly package. I called it Launch Her. I know that sounds like something everyone and their cousin has tried, but the angle was different. I wasn't building another generic SaaS product. I'd spent months researching the specific pain points that women in underserved communities faced when starting businesses. Access to design resources, affordable legal templates, real mentorship, not just a Zoom call with some influencer. I had survey data. I had wireframes. I had a full pitch deck that I'd been refining with Mrs. Calloway's help over email. I told Danielle everything, every detail, every feature, every revenue model, every competitive differentiator. Maybe I was naive, but I trusted her. She listened. She asked smart questions. She told me it was brilliant. She even offered to help me practice my pitch sometime. I remember feeling so grateful that I had someone in my corner, someone who actually believed in me. Looking back now, that should have been a red flag, not the believing part, the way she asked questions. They weren't the questions of a friend who was curious. They were the questions of someone taking inventory. Things started shifting around month 14 of living together. Little things. Danielle started working late more often. She'd come home and immediately close herself in her room with her laptop. She stopped suggesting movie nights. When I'd talk about launcher updates, she'd nod, but her eyes would glaze over like she'd already heard it. Which I guess she had, just not the way I thought. I also started noticing things missing. Not physical things, digital things. My flash drive with the pitch deck disappeared from the kitchen counter one day. I tore the apartment apart looking for it. Danielle helped me search and said she hadn't seen it. I figured I must have left it at work or dropped it somewhere. I recreated the deck from my backups, annoyed but not suspicious. Then my notebook went missing. The one with all my handwritten market research notes and early sketches. I kept it in my bedside drawer. One day it just wasn't there. I asked Danielle. She said maybe I'd moved it during my last cleaning spree. I believed her because why wouldn't I? I didn't think much of it at the time. Around this period, Danielle got a promotion at work. Junior strategist to account manager. It was a big jump. Everyone congratulated her. Our boss, Martin, made a whole speech about her innovative thinking and fresh perspective. I clapped along with everyone else. I was happy for her, genuinely. But then she started getting pulled into meetings I wasn't part of. She'd come back looking energized, secretive. When I asked what was going on, she'd wave her hand and say, "Oh, just client stuff. Boring." But she didn't look bored. She looked like someone sitting on a secret she was dying to tell but knew she couldn't. It was Mrs. Calloway who first sounded the alarm. I'd sent her an updated version of my pitch deck in March, and she called me a few days later. "Have you shared your concept with anyone at your company?" she asked. "Just my roommate," I said. "Why?" There was a long pause. "I was at a women in business luncheon last weekend, and someone mentioned a new platform concept that sounded very familiar. Very familiar. They said it was being developed internally at a marketing firm downtown." My stomach dropped, but I told myself it was a coincidence. Lots of people were working on empowerment platforms. The market was trending that way. It didn't have to be mine. "Just be careful," Mrs. Calloway said. "Protect your work." I said I would, but I didn't do anything about it. Not yet, because accusing your roommate and closest friend of stealing your idea based on a second-hand rumor felt insane. I didn't want to be that person. The paranoid one. The one who sees betrayal everywhere because she grew up in a house full of it. So I pushed it down and kept going. 2 months later, the company announced its annual innovation gala. It was this big event Martin threw every year where employees could pitch internal projects or client proposals to a panel of senior leadership and outside investors. Winners got funding, mentorship, and a fast track to leadership roles. It was a huge deal. I'd been planning to pitch launch her at the gala for months. I'd told Martin about it casually at a happy hour, and he'd seemed interested. I was finally ready. I had the deck. I had the data. I had the passion. This was going to be my moment. Then the email went out. It was the official gala lineup. 8 presenters. My name wasn't on it. Danielle's was. I stared at the screen for a long time. Her project was listed as Empower Launch, a subscription platform for women-led startups. I read it 3 times, then I read it again. Empower Launch, a subscription platform for women-led startups. My vision blurred. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. I clicked on the description and there it was. Mentorship matching, branding toolkits, legal templates, affordable monthly subscription, underserved communities. It was launch her, every single piece of it. She hadn't even bothered to change the core structure. She just swapped the name and slapped her face on it. I don't remember the next hour very well. I think I sat in the bathroom at work with the door locked, just breathing. trying to decide if I was losing my mind or if this was actually happening. When I got home that night, Danielle was on the couch watching TV like nothing was wrong. She smiled at me, that same warm, easy smile. "Hey, you okay? You look tired," she said. I almost lost it right there. But something in me, some survival instinct from years of living with a man who punished you for reacting, told me to wait. "Don't show your hand. Not yet." "Yeah, just a long day," I said. I went to my room and called Mrs. Calloway. She was furious, not in a loud way, in that cold, precise way that teachers get when they've seen injustice and know exactly how to dismantle it. She told me to gather every piece of evidence I had, timestamps on documents, email drafts, the original survey data, my notebook entries, whatever I could reconstruct, the emails I'd sent her with early versions of the deck, all of it. "You built this," she said, "and we're going to prove it." Over the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost in my own apartment. I was polite to Danielle, surface-level friendly, but inside I was building a case. I pulled up every Google Doc with its creation date and edit history. I found emails from over a year ago where I described Launcher's features to Mrs. Calloway in detail. I had text messages to a friend from college where I'd brainstormed the name. I even found an old voice memo on my phone where I'd talked through the revenue model while driving to work one morning, time-stamped 8 months before Danielle's project appeared on the Gala lineup. The evidence was overwhelming, and the more I gathered, the angrier I got, not hot anger, cold anger, the kind that sharpens you instead of breaking you. I also discovered something else. Danielle had been meeting with an outside investor named Richard Keene for weeks. He was one of the panelists for the gala. She'd been positioning herself as the visionary behind Empower Launch, building a relationship with the exact person who could fund it. She wasn't just stealing my idea. She was building an entire narrative around herself as its creator. And she was doing it right under my nose, in our shared apartment, probably on the couch where we used to watch bad TV together. The gala was on a Saturday evening. Fancy venue downtown, open bar, string quartet, the whole thing. Martin went all out. Everyone from the office was there, plus investors, local press, some city council members. Danielle looked stunning. She wore this emerald green dress and her hair was perfect, and she was working the room like she'd been born for it. People kept coming up to her, shaking her hand, telling her they'd heard great things about her project. She soaked it all in with that signature smile. I wore a simple black dress. I stayed near the back. I had a folder in my bag that felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Mrs. Calloway was there too. I'd asked her to come as my guest. Martin had approved it when I told him she was my former professor and mentor. She sat at my table, calm and composed, sipping sparkling water like she was at a garden party and not about to help me detonate a bomb. The presentation started at 8. Each person got 15 minutes. Danielle was third in the lineup. I watched the first 2 presentations without hearing a word. My palms were sweating. I kept going over the plan in my head. Mrs. Calloway put her hand on my arm at one point and squeezed. "Breathe," she whispered. "You've got this." Then it was Danielle's turn. She walked up to the stage like she owned it. Confident, radiant, she clicked through her slides and I watched my idea come out of her mouth. My research, my revenue projections, my target demographics. She even used a phrase I'd coined, democratizing the startup toolkit, which I'd written in my notebook. The notebook that went missing. She was good, I'll give her that. She presented it beautifully. The audience was engaged. Richard Keene was nodding along in the front row. When she finished, she got a round of applause that made my chest physically hurt. Then came the cue and a portion. Martin opened it up to the panel. One of the investors asked about customer acquisition strategy. Danielle answered smoothly. Another asked about the tech stack. She stumbled slightly but recovered. Then Martin said, "We have time for one more question from the floor." I stood up. I don't know where the courage came from. Maybe from Mrs. Calloway sitting next to me. Maybe from every night I'd spent in that library as a teenager, hungry and exhausted, telling myself that someday my ideas would matter. Maybe from the voice of my father telling me they wouldn't. "Hi, Danielle," I said. My voice was steady. I was surprised by how steady it was. "I have a question about the origin of Empower Launch." She looked at me from the stage, and for just a second, just a flash, I saw something behind her eyes. Fear. It was there and gone so fast most people probably missed it. But I didn't. "Of course," she said, smiling. "Go ahead. Can you walk us through when you first conceived this idea? Specifically, the mentorship matching feature and the branded toolkit concept." She blinked. "Well, it was something I'd been developing over the past several months. I identified a gap in the market for women-led startups and started building from there." "Several months," I repeated. "Because I have documentation showing that this exact concept, including the mentorship matching, the branding toolkits, the legal templates, and the target demographic of women in underserved communities, was developed by me over 18 months ago. I have timestamped Google Docs, emails to my mentor." I gestured toward Mrs. Calloway, "voice memos, and text messages that predate your involvement by nearly a year." The room went silent. Not quiet. Silent. The kind of silence where you can hear the ice shifting in someone's glass 3 tables away. Danielle's smile didn't drop immediately. It sort of froze. Like her face hadn't gotten the message yet that the performance was over. "I'm not sure what you're implying," she said, but her voice had changed. Higher, tighter. "I'm not implying anything," I said. "I'm stating that Empower Launch is my concept, originally called Launch Her, which I developed independently and shared with you in confidence as my roommate. I have a complete evidence trail that I'm happy to present to the panel right now." I pulled the folder from my bag and held it up. It was thick, visibly thick. Printouts of documents, screenshots of email threads, transcripts of voice memos with timestamps. Martin stood up from his seat at the panel table. He looked like someone who just realized the elegant dinner party he was hosting had a gas leak. "Okay, let's take this offline," he said. "Danielle, why don't you step down and we'll continue with the next presenter." But Danielle didn't step down. She stood there on that stage, under those lights, and something in her shifted. I could see it happening in real time. The mask she wore, the one that charmed the office and fooled every person in that room, it cracked. Her hands started shaking. She gripped the edges of the podium. She started, then stopped, then started again. "She's right." 2 words, barely above a whisper, but the microphone caught them and sent them across the entire room. Martin's mouth opened. Richard Keene leaned forward in his chair. I heard someone behind me inhale sharply. "She's right," Danielle said again, louder this time. Her voice was cracking now. "The idea is hers, all of it. I took her pitch deck. I took her notebook. I took everything and I told myself I could do it better, that she'd never actually launch it anyway and I could make it real." She was crying now, not the pretty kind. The ugly, messy kind where your mascara runs and your face scrunches up and you can't control the sounds coming out of you. The entire room was frozen. Nobody knew what to do. "I just wanted to be someone," she said. "I wanted them to see me. I wanted to matter." And here's the thing that made it complicated. Part of me understood that. The desperate need to be seen, to be valued, to have people look at you and think you're something. I knew that hunger intimately. It had driven every late night, every ramen dinner, every hour in that library. But understanding someone's pain doesn't mean you have to accept what they do with it. Martin called an intermission. Security didn't escort Danielle out or anything dramatic like that. She just sort of crumpled off the stage and sat in a chair by the wall while people whispered and stared. A few of her work friends went over to her, but most of them just looked confused, like they were recalculating everything they thought they knew about her. Mrs. Calloway walked with me to a quiet corner of the venue. She put both hands on my shoulders and looked me right in the eyes. "You did the hardest thing a person can do," she said. "You stood up for yourself in a room full of people who would have been easier to just go along with." I cried then, not because I was sad. Because something I'd been carrying since I was a kid, this weight, this belief that my ideas and my voice and my worth could just be taken from me by someone louder or more charming or more powerful, it finally started to lift. The aftermath was messy. Real life always is. Martin pulled me into his office the following Monday. He'd reviewed my documentation over the weekend. He said, and I'm paraphrasing because I was still in a daze, that the evidence was clear and he was deeply sorry that this had happened under his watch. He asked me if I wanted to press forward with a formal complaint through HR. I said yes. Danielle was placed on immediate administrative leave pending an internal investigation. She didn't fight it. From what I heard through the office grapevine, she cooperated fully. She admitted to taking the flash drive and the notebook. She admitted to recreating my deck using my materials. She admitted that she'd been positioning herself with Richard Keene using my work for weeks. The investigation took about 3 weeks. During that time, I went through the full range of human emotion approximately 800 times. Anger, relief, guilt, weirdly, sadness for the friendship I thought I'd had, more anger, then a strange, hollow kind of peace. Danielle was terminated, not just for the theft. It came out during the investigation that she'd falsified some of her credentials on her original job application. She'd claimed a certification she didn't have. That alone would have been enough to let her go, but combined with the intellectual property theft, it was a clean severance. No references, no coming back. She moved out of the apartment on a Thursday. I wasn't there. I stayed at Mrs. Calloway's that night because I couldn't stand the idea of watching her pack up her things in our kitchen, the kitchen where I'd told her about launch her over homemade pasta and cheap wine. She left a note on the counter. I still have it. It said, "I know sorry isn't enough. I know I ruined something that can't be fixed. I hope you build it. You deserve to." I read it about 20 times. I still don't know how I feel about it. Richard Keene reached out to me about a week after the gala. He said he'd been impressed by the concept and even more impressed by the way I'd handled the situation. He asked if I'd be willing to present launch her to him properly, on my terms, with my name on it. I said yes. I also said I needed some time to prepare, not because the deck wasn't ready. It had been ready for months, but because I needed to do it right. I needed to present it not as a response to what Danielle did, but as what it always was. My vision. My work. My future. Mrs. Calloway helped me prepare. We spent 3 weekends going over every slide, every talking point, every potential question. She was relentless in the best way. She'd play devil's advocate until I wanted to throw my laptop across the room, and then she'd smile and say, "Good, now you're ready for the real ones." The presentation to Richard went well, better than well. He was genuinely interested. He asked sharp questions and I had sharp answers. By the end, he said he wanted to bring in 2 other investors for a follow-up meeting. That follow-up happened 6 weeks later. I wore the same black dress I'd worn to the gala. I don't know why. Maybe it felt like armor by that point. They offered seed funding. Not life-changing money, but enough to build a real prototype, hire a small team, and start testing with actual users. I cried in my car in the parking garage after the meeting. Happy tears. The kind you earn. Launch Her is real now. It's small. It's scrappy. We have about 300 users on our beta platform, and the feedback has been incredible. Women in places like where I grew up, small towns with limited resources and even more limited expectations, are using tools that I built because I knew what it felt like to need them. I hired Mrs. Calloway as an advisor. She said she'd do it for free, but I insisted on paying her, even if it's not much yet. She earned it. She earned it 1,000 times over, every time she told me my ideas mattered when I didn't believe it myself. As for Danielle, I heard through mutual acquaintances that she went back to her hometown and started therapy. I don't know if that's true or just the kind of thing people say to wrap up someone else's story neatly. I hope it's true, not because I've forgiven her. I haven't, not fully, maybe not ever. But I understand what it's like to feel invisible. To feel like you have to steal someone else's fire because you don't believe you have your own. I lived in that feeling for years. The difference is I chose to build instead of take. She made a different choice, and it cost her everything. I think about my father sometimes when I'm working late on Launch Her, about how he took things from people because it made him feel powerful, about how Danielle did the same thing, just with a prettier smile and better timing. The pattern is the same: charm on the outside, theft on the inside. And the people who get hurt are always the ones who trusted enough to share what they had. I don't regret trusting Danielle. I know that sounds crazy, but if I hadn't trusted her, I might have stopped trusting everyone. And then I never would have leaned on Mrs. Calloway. I never would have stood up at that gala. I never would have found the investors who believed in my work. Trust got me hurt, but it also got me here. the apartment feels different now. I got a new roommate, a quiet grad student named Priya who mostly keeps to herself and studies biomechanics. We're not best friends. We split the rent and occasionally watch cooking shows together. It's simple. It's honest. And honestly, that's exactly what I need right now. Last month, I got an email from a woman named Keisha in Alabama. She'd used one of our branding templates to design the logo for her catering business. She attached a photo of her new business cards, spread out on her kitchen table, and in the email she wrote, "I've been wanting to do this for 15 years. Your platform made me feel like I could." I printed that email out and pinned it above my desk, right next to Mrs. Calloway's note that she slipped me after I placed third in that college pitch competition years ago. It says, "Third place this time. You won't stop here." She was right. I used to think that the worst thing someone could do to you was take your idea. But it's not. The worst thing would be letting that theft convince you that your ideas aren't worth protecting, that you aren't worth fighting for, that the version of you who sat on a living room floor sharing dreams over cheap wine was foolish for believing in someone. She wasn't foolish, she was brave, and she still is. So yeah, my roommate stole my business idea. She presented it in front of our entire company and a room full of investors. She took my notebooks and my flash drive and my trust and tried to build a career on top of them. And then she confessed, in front of everyone, under the lights, on the stage. And I'm the one who's still standing. If you take anything from this story, let it be this. Protect your ideas, document everything. Timestamps matter, emails matter, that voice memo you almost deleted matters. But also, don't let the fear of being stolen stop you from creating in the first place. The world needs what you're building. Even if someone tries to take it, the fire that made it was yours. And fires like that don't go out just because someone tried to steal the match. They burn brighter.